I have two things. I would say the first thing is exactly like you said, listen to yourself. Because if you can't get comfortable listening to yourself, then you'll never be able to grow. Because honestly, the thing that's really hard as vocalists, our instrument being in our body, we cannot accurately hear ourselves. We're listening to our voice through cartilage, through bone, through our physical structure of our skull. And it's not what we actually sound like. Like when you leave a voice message on somebody's phone and you go, that sounds absolutely nothing like me. Yeah. You would have that same reaction to hearing yourself sing. So the first step would be get comfortable to listening to yourself and then say, I think everyone should be in voice lessons at some point, not all the time, but I think everyone should take them. It is normal to want to improve your voice and to seek out an expert in that pedagogy state, that technique state, or whatever that can help you improve and also be another set of ears.
Chase and Malia, welcome to the Churchfront Worship and Tech Podcast.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Awesome, guys. Tell our listeners, we've met really just now and via email leading up to the conversation, but I want you to introduce yourselves to our audience and tell them who you are, what you do, what you're up to these days. Like, give us the inside scoop as to who Chase and Malia are.
Sounds good. We are worship leaders. We also both met and went to school for voice.
Yeah.
My degree was in vocal music education, and I wanted to be a choir teacher. And we moved to Germany and kind of pursued opera. Decided that really wasn't for us.
Yeah. Oddly enough. Yeah.
Malia's been leading worship since she was, in diapers.
Yeah.
And I came to it late, kind of from the performance side. And so I had a lot to learn about what worship leading actually was. Mm-hmm. But we're both super passionate about the voice and how to use the voice and how your technique for your voice can better serve your church, better serve your band, better serve your ministry. I feel very convicted that every service deserves my best, not just the first one is the warm up. Then that 11 o'clock service, I'm really hanging in there. And
getting into it.
6:30 is like, we can barely hold on. We're just trying to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. We ultimately, we both grew up singing either in choir or theater growing up. And then we met in college, which was a classical program. So we were in a classical program pursuing opera, got married, moved to Germany. I had led worship as a teenager and then brought him into that world. And we've kind of been doing it ever since. So almost 10 years now, we've been leading together. And we're currently worship pastors at Jubilee Fellowship in Inglewood, Colorado. So we're not too far from you. And we've been in the Denver metro community now leading for the last 4 or 5 years. And we just have a huge passion for combining vocal technique, all the things we learned in school and our experience live performing and singing and empowering worship leaders and bringing it into worship leading because I feel like it's not talked about.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I just think it's really funny. There's a bit of a, people think that if you are a person who works on it or sees a voice teacher or any of this other stuff, it's well, you're just not anointed, or maybe you're not, you weren't, you either have it or you don't. And I'm like, well, the guitar player over there takes lessons and nobody was born playing the drums. You learn these things and you get better with those things and you get better with development, with mentors, with all that kind of stuff. And I just think it's the same for worship leading. Now we try to keep our channel and our content based on the actual technique of stuff because, we can't measure if we're reacting to something. We like to break down what professional singers or people who are obviously very good at leading worship or singing. We like to break down what they're doing so that you can have just a tangible piece to take with you and practice on your own. But a lot of that is just that technique based. And if we're watching something, we can't feel the presence in that room and we can't, we can't feel the way the Holy Spirit is affecting that place. So we try to not comment on that level of stuff and just keep it into the area where we feel like we have expertise, which is the voice.
Technical side.
The technical side. What was your degree?
Vocal performance. Yes.
So mine was vocal education. Hers was performance.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause you were looking to go be a choir director or a teacher. And then Malia, you were looking to go actually perform operatic
I was going to be
side.
an opera singer. I was going to do that. And then I think before we met, my plan was to go get a vocal performance degree and then a master's in theology and work at a church. I grew up Catholic. And so it was going to be a little bit more of a traditional liturgical style of being involved in ministry was kind of my thought. And then when I really dove into the classical side of singing and opera, I kind of fell in love with the performing side of it. And but then God had other plans and it all turned around. So
And Germany was cool because it was like, it's €200 a semester, which is like $350. So you get your master's. And I went too for performance, but I still had a lot of like growing to do. Somebody told me, oh, you could do opera if you wanted. And I was like, oh man, somebody told me I could do something with singing. Sweet.
I will do that.
I'm going
to
chase that. And then I found out pretty quickly, I don't know if I like opera.
Yeah.
I do like a lot of parts of opera, but
you can be honest.
Yeah. I don't know if I like opera. The story goes, we were walking past the State Opera House. They're playing De Rosenkavalier, and Melia says, we should go. And so I say, sweet. And then she says, it's 6 hours. And I said, I'm not going.
Wow. And in fact, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
And maybe I don't want to do this. I would never invite somebody to that. That is crazy.
Yeah. I don't just not want to go to the opera for it being 6 hours, but I can't imagine doing it for 6 hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. I can imagine almost doing it because you're doing something active. You're participating in doing something that you enjoy doing.
Right.
But, am I going to invite my friends to it? No.
Yeah.
No.
I wonder, like, backing up a little bit, you're also YouTubers. So you've used the platform of YouTube to not only kind of teach, but I think just kind of make more available those skills and tactics. So I want to know, like, who was the bullish one on YouTube? Who started it? What were, like, when did you guys start your channel? How did that kind of come to fruition?
So we started it, I think it was 2017, maybe 2018, but we were living in Germany. We had actually found the Churchfront channel, and there were a lot of channels at that time that just really encouraged us wanting to like get started. And we were leading worship at the time. But we really just wanted to sing and we just wanted to make covers. And I was obsessed with YouTube at the time. I would consume so much content.
I didn't even have an account.
No, Chase didn't even know about it. And so I was like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start YouTube. And I said, and I think that we're going to do this for a living. Like it was totally a dream, but we were so committed at the beginning. Like we follow Sean Cannell, who also is Think Media, all of that stuff. We got so into it. We posted a video every week of us just doing a cover. We would use our friends. We would use the awesome like nature around us to make these cool videos. And because we were overseas, it was also an opportunity for our family to see us perform. And we originally started just singing, just doing covers, to nobody watching it, to like the 50 people that we knew.
Making cool videos. They're all bad at first.
They're all bad.
They're all
just
bad.
do it.
At first. You just got to keep doing it.
Yeah. And we would use like a light bulb in an IKEA paper lantern as like our lighting. So we've come a long way.
I love it.
I put a white paper bag over a lamp, and that was like the diffuser.
It was so good.
Like, look at our lighting.
I mean, it works. It works, doesn't it?
It did.
And I think that we just started off with a dream of like, we loved content, we loved YouTube and the opportunity it presented, but we also loved singing. And then, we moved towards, Chase was having an active voice studio at the time. So he was actively teaching lessons privately, and he always had that. And I think I had a few students. And then when we moved home to Colorado in 2019, we shifted to more lesson videos on our channel. Again, to not a lot of like viewing, but we felt really good about that content. Like it was a content we wanted to create. Yeah. And then eventually, like fast forward quite a bit, we took a little break, but fast forward to maybe 2020, 2021, we had our first request for a react video, and we despised reaction videos.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we did not want to be a reaction channel.
Well, I felt like most of the ones I've ever seen were people going, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing!"
Right? They said nothing.
Just
like,
oh my gosh,
It's a lot
that
of
was
fluff.
so high.
Yeah, a
And
lot
I'm
of fluff.
Oh, it sure was.
Sure was
Wow.
high. And
I
so,
just, I don't know. I'm not understanding why people watch these.
right. When people would, so we had our first person request us to make a React video. We did it and it did okay. Like definitely considering the views on our channel, it did well. But then really what got us into the scene of like reaction videos was we reacted to a Filipino singer and we got so much hate. It was like a ton of hate, but all of the engagement.
Yeah.
And ultimately the hate was because we were actually saying stuff. Like we were actually saying, hey, I think that we hear some tension in her singing and I'm actually worried for her voice long term. Like this was our first time hearing her.
Struggle. Yeah. She's in her early 20s now, but as she comes into her later 20s and early 30s, it's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah.
And then, well, one thing kind of to back up a little bit was so when I started leading worship, I jumped into guitar and I didn't play the guitar before and I always wanted to play guitar and I just dove into guitar and that's how I fell in love with YouTube. And when we started to make, one of the reasons why we decided to make these lesson videos is because I'm like, I say the same stuff to 90% of my students.
Yes.
And Paul Davids, who's a really wonderful teacher and guitar guy on YouTube, he talks about how he would do the same lesson to 20 people, and now he makes one lesson for 100,000 people.
Yep.
Right.
And that's just that made so much sense. So I kind of jumped into it, but we found that when I look for something to help me learn guitar, I know how to search that. What do singers look for when they're trying to learn how to sing?
Right.
And what do singers watch and what types of things? Because there's not like, oh, press here and your voice will sound so much better. Or, oh, drink this magic tea, buy a new voice.
Use a humidifier.
And so we know that singers watch other singers and singers enjoy, what other professional singers have to, say. And like, I love watching, we love watching Tiny Desks.
Yeah.
And seeing some
good.
just fantastic artists.
Good.
Yeah. We just watched the one with Josh Groban doing Sweeney Todd.
Oh my gosh. Incredible.
And I forget the name of the singer who does Mrs. Lovett. She's unreal, fantastic.
But it's so stripped down, and I think it really helps expose like the real skill of singing, which I think a lot of times people just don't consider.
Yeah.
And that has been a huge passion of ours to like say, hey, these people that you love listening to, whether you're a singer or not, like what they're doing is really impressive and intentional. Like it's not an accident.
And here's why.
Exactly.
And here's why, because people just think you're born with it. And that was one thing that I actually really, so since taking this full-time job, I now have only one student, and he's this a man named Don, who's the best. And he is in his early 60s. His goal was literally just to sing and play guitar when he went camping, and like he could lead people in singing songs.
I love it.
When we started, he was completely tone deaf. He could play some guitar, like he's pretty good at guitar, but he couldn't match pitch. Really struggled with hearing things and like loves music. But now it's probably been 3 years. He's so much farther beyond his original goal, and he just loves singing. But it's like this idea that it's a skill. You know, nobody, everyone has that story of like, well, I was singing when I was a kid and somebody told me I was terrible. And it's like, can you imagine somebody walking up to an 8-year-old who's like trying to play the guitar or trying to play the piano going, you're awful. You should never play that instrument. Like nobody would ever do that. And so, but it's like, people think it's like, it's okay if you do it for singing. I don't get it. So, that was another thing. We just want people, if you enjoy singing, you should sing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the more you sing, the better you're going to get at singing. It's just, it's how you use your instrument, how you use your body, all that stuff.
And we'll get into this, and I want to pick your brain a little bit about that too, because in the light of the church, that's a lot of the common, I think, the feedback from people is like, well, I either I'm tone deaf, so I can't sing, or I could never do what you guys do kind of thing. The other piece is people who just believe that you're born with the ability to hear harmonies, and like, and I just think the voice is, I have a vocal pedagogy emphasis from my degree too. So I did all the vocal lessons and stuff. And I just remember my vocal teacher in college teaching us, like, it is a muscle. And you often don't think of your voice as a muscle, but if you don't use your muscle and then you go try to like randomly like lift 300 pounds, you're not going to lift 300 pounds. Like, but if you over the time, you know, like you, this Don guy exercising that muscle time and time again, and then feeling different ways to use it and kind of different environments that you use it in and different purposes, you actually start to actually feel and primarily understand what the voice is and how it works with your body. I just I might believe that like 0.1% of people are actually tone deaf, and the rest of them could probably learn, right? I mean, you can, so anyway, we'll go. We might go back to that, but that was I'm glad you kind of touched on that. Okay, so I want to go back to the reaction videos and talk about just in terms of worship music. What right now? What are you guys noticing? If you were to survey the landscape of worship music and what you guys have seen recently, what are some things that stick out to you? Like maybe talk about in the past, like, I don't know, a couple months, like what's sticking out to you as stylistic emphasis that you notice, or things that you're like, man, this is not a great thing. We should be really careful about this. Like anything come to mind for you guys?
I think got two.
You got two? Go for it.
You sure?
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
All right. So the first one is going to be, I think as singers, we're always trying to emulate or like copy the sounds of our favorite singers, right? Mine was Michael Bublé in high school. Yours was Celine Dion.
Sure was.
But I will always and forever be the wish.com version of Michael Bublé. I am Timu's version of Michael Bublé, and I will never be as good as Michael Bublé is at being Michael Bublé. So, you know, that was just like, the best you're going to sound is by sounding like yourself. So Kim Walker, fantastic, amazing, so good. I hear a lot of people trying to do that heavy, you know, let every, you know, that's not, that's Werla,
Bethany.
Or Bethany Werla, who is also fantastic. But like people having this, they're trying to have this big, heavy, and they go, and it's about, they're trying to gain more power, but they're doing it by kind of getting in the way of their voice, which ultimately gives you less power, makes you want to work harder. And then the other one, some people would call indie girl voice. I would call like kind of like a baby singing.
Yes, that's what I would call it.
Yeah. How would you describe that sound?
I think that, like that tiny singing, baby singing is great. And I think that here's the thing. If your voice is naturally like, if you talk and then sing and it sounds the same, I have absolutely no problem with it. Not that I have a problem anyway, but if you don't talk like that, if that's not what your voice sounds like, you're actually doing yourself a disservice trying to recreate it. Yeah. And I would say that's a huge trend that I'm seeing in worship, specifically for females. Like, I think honestly, a lot of the issues that I see are predominantly female worship leaders. I think the male side of worship leading, I don't know if it's just because like you guys aren't trying to sound like other people. Like, I don't know if that's just a man thing, but like there's not a lot of guys out there that I feel like I just want to sound just like David Crowder or just like Brandon Lake. I think that Chase, being like a tenor, gets excited when Chris Brown and Brandon Lake release music because it's higher and it's in his register. Like Phil Wickham. It's not like Cody Carnes sings pretty low sometimes. And you know what I mean? But I think that specifically that baby tiny indie girl, which is in the pop.
Try to like sing it a little bit. Just
well, give me an example of like an artist who has that style, that like authentically an artist you would listen to and be like, okay, that's like the small voice that you're referencing.
Tiffany from Elevation Worship. I can't remember her last name. She's got short blonde hair. She sings, you know, More Than Able.
Yes.
Gosh, You Are Loved, all those songs. And you hear her on the radio and you know that's who's singing, you know? Yeah. Abby Gamboa is another one of my favorite worship leaders. She was Upper Room. Now she's, I think, on her own. She just did Who Else with Gateway, which is like, if you haven't heard it, it's like one of the best new songs out there. But her voice is also very like, it's small, and it's not small in like dynamic or power, but like the resonance of it is small. And I think a lot of times people, if you try to recreate that, you will hold yourself. You will, and same for Tiffany, like if you're trying to recreate this sound that I think is naturally theirs, it's going to hold back potentially, at least for me.
One thing I want to say about Abby Gamboa is we've been listening to her for years.
Yeah.
And when she talks, and Tiffany does this as well. When Tiffany talks, she sounds like this, right? And then she sings just like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but I've heard a bunch of people talk, normally like I'm talking, but then when I start singing, I sound like, that's not, that is in our opinion, and this is where we get in trouble. It's your instrument, and ultimately you get to use your instrument however you want to use your instrument.
Right.
But when you manufacture a sound, it's never going to be as efficient, rich, resonant, consistent as if you just leaned into the voice that God gave you that you already use. You use this voice all the time. And it's not, people always kind of say, oh, this is my speaking voice and this is my singing voice. And they're just, I take this off and I put my singing hat on, and they're totally different things. They're the same instrument. It's also physically, this from pedagogy, functionally doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
And so why are we reinventing the wheel and pretending that we know how to use our body parts better than our body does?
Right.
It's just,
I think my follow-up question to that, and I've kind of wrestled with this. I think I wrestled with this in my early 20s as a worship leader, and I was kind of getting into the full-time worship leader role. Yeah. I was struggling with all the information I had about vocal pedagogy and kind of knowing how to steward the voice, and at least feeling like I had a decent wrap around that, but really wanting to improve my voice. Like I would listen back to recordings of myself and be like, like that's the way that sounds, like that's not, I don't love that. And so what would you tell somebody who is trying to grow or improve that kind of vocal execution? Maybe not mimic another artist or mimic something that they're not, but how do you grow without trying to manufacture, if that makes sense, as a vocal artist?
I have two things. I would say the first thing is exactly like you said, listen to yourself. Because if you can't get comfortable listening to yourself, then you'll never be able to grow. Because honestly, the thing that's really hard as vocalists, our instrument being in our body, we cannot accurately hear ourselves. We're listening to our voice through cartilage, through bone, through our physical structure of our skull. And it's not what we actually sound like. Like when you leave a voice message on somebody's phone and you go, that sounds absolutely nothing like me. You would have that same reaction to hearing yourself sing. So I think the first step would be get comfortable to listening to yourself and then say, what is it in that I'm hearing that I want to change? So then the next step would be, I think everyone should be in voice lessons at some point, not all the time, but I think everyone should take them. I think we should make it more normalize it. Like it's kind of like how they're normalizing therapy right now. Like it is normal to want to improve your voice and to seek out an expert in that pedagogy state, that technique state, or whatever that can help you improve and also be another set of ears. Like I'll be honest, I am not actively in voice lessons right now, but I've taken, a decade of lessons. And I also have Chase, where we teach each other.
I constantly give her feedback.
Always giving me feedback.
Just never stop with the feedback.
Yeah.
Unsolicited.
Unsolicited for sure. So that's what I would say. I would say record yourself, listen to yourself, find those things that you're wanting to change or improve, and then seek help either through, there's a lot of content. There's a lot of stuff out there.
And a lot of really wonderful voice teachers.
And then there's a lot of wonderful voice teachers. I mean, especially after 2020, things can be remote and virtual. So you can learn from anyone across the country or world even. So I really loved what you said. I'll be honest, I still hate listening to myself. and my joke is that, I like to sing and people don't seem to ask me to stop. And so it's a mutually, so I must be doing okay.
Or just like, if you're not going to ask me to stop and I like singing, we're going to be okay.
Right.
And I'm just going to keep doing this. But like, I always said to people, you don't take voice lessons because you're bad at singing. You take voice lessons because you want to get better at singing.
You want to get better.
It's just like anything. I can play with our church. We've only been here about a year. I typically play electric guitar. Before I was playing a lot of acoustic.
Yeah.
I can play worship electric guitar pretty well. I know how it sounds, that I'm enough on the instrument to where I can do everything I need to do. But I still take lessons because I love the instrument, because I want to be better at the instrument, because I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be limited by it. And I think that's the same thing with voice lessons. Do you want to be limited because the way you sing tires you out, you're fried after one song? Or do you want to be limited by saying things like, well, I can't sing like that, I can only sing like this?
Right.
And that always is, well, why not?
I mean, let's be honest. We all have volunteers on our teams, or have had volunteers on our teams, that can only sing a handful of songs. And I think that while we still want to include volunteers for sure and get people involved and empower and develop people, I still think that we should look at that as a problem and not like where we should land. We should say, hey, why can't I sing this song? I think anybody that's a worship leader or worship pastor should be able to sing any song. Yeah. Now, whether or not that's the best song for you is a different conversation, but you should be able to sing any song.
Serve well. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can, if you're a good steward of your voice and your instrument, it's just, again, I love referring to the voice as the instrument, because if you think about an electric player picking up their electric and you give them one of 10 songs, they should be able to play 99% of those songs pretty accurately, pretty well, because if they've practiced their instrument, they should be able to flow around the neck and feel out the parts and figure out how to execute. And the voice is an instrument. And so you might need to lower a key or raise a key to fit more comfortably in that kind of muscular environment. Yeah. But, you should be able to execute, regardless of style or, time signature, all that kind of stuff. Right. So, man, you guys are dropping such gold, I think, for our audience. And I think, this is a lot of what you see in your channel is when you hear you guys talk about what you're seeing. And, I think it's just a lot of your guys' experience and years of doing this that really starts to shine through you guys, and just the expertise and things like that. I want to pivot to volunteers for a second, because our audience is full of, part-time, full-time, even volunteer worship leaders who, one, probably did not go to school for vocal pedagogy or for any kind of vocal background. They have no training. They're just the guy or gal who had a voice and an instrument and showed up and was there and asked to serve, right? They get a team and they have 3 to 5 vocalists that maybe they rotate through on a given church. How do you guys, what's your rhythm like with your volunteers of vocal teams? Like, what are some of the things that you do to keep them kind of in line with the vision for, stewarding your voice well that you guys have? What do rehearsals look like? What do kind of warm-ups and things like that? What do you guys do with your team? I'm so curious to hear some of that from you guys.
Well, so I can be honest with our current situation, because we currently have 4 worship pastors here on staff, which is, I think, a little bit unheard of. It feels like unheard of because our church is not super large. So we don't currently have anybody in the weekend services that lead that's not on staff. We've got BGVs that come on and help sometimes, but then I can speak to our students' situation, which I think is what a lot of places deal with as well, where it is all volunteer students and they're all young. And again, being new here, one of our thoughts and our plans and desires is to give these students opportunity to lead, right? So you need a safe is the wrong word, but like an appropriate place for them to have the chance to mess up, have the chance to do it, to feel the pressure of leading, because let's be honest, you are still performing in that sense. And if you're not used to, okay, I'm standing up here singing, like you need to just do it. And so I think students and maybe smaller non-weekend opportunities are really important for volunteers, especially when they're starting out, because you can teach somebody and you can develop somebody so much, but until they have that opportunity and experience of like, okay, I did this and, this wasn't great, or I got super nervous, or I missed that intro, or, my voice kind of cracked or whatever. Like the more you do that, the better you will get inevitably without voice lessons. Like that would be number one.
Even just learning what keys are good for you.
Absolutely.
Being able to express that. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with where I say, what key would you like to do that song in? And they have no idea.
Yeah.
Right.
And they go, well, what is Brandon Lake or whoever do it in? And I'm like, well, I know your voice a little bit, and I don't think, and it's not my call because ultimately you're the one leading it. But when we get to, warm up or run through and all that kind of stuff, and you're going, oh my gosh, I've made a terrible mistake. And we've all been there.
Absolutely.
But that's a valuable learning experience. And I think as pastors, it's our jobs to develop and usher in and lead and guide the next generation of worship leaders, of pastors, of ministers, of ministry leaders. And you can't do that if they've never had any experience. And so even if we have an event and one of the staff leaders are available and they might be the best one for the job.
Right.
And it's our opinion that you should reserve opportunities for people you're trying to develop, even if they blow it.
Right.
Nobody really blows it, but it's just about giving them opportunity to do it, empowering them, and then using it as an opportunity of growth and not looking at it as an opportunity of this is polished and we're serving our absolute best to our church right now. Right. I think there's a balance. You absolutely have to serve your best to Jesus and the church. Right. But we're also called to grow up the next generation.
I think you could also talk about specifically the two things that we find most important in singing are breathing and vowels. We say air and vowel.
Air and vowel.
So anybody that's been a singer, going to start singing and looking to improve, I think those are the two most important factors when it comes to singing. So when we say air, we talk about, we usually develop with people just how to breathe. A lot of people don't know how to take a breath and then how to use that breath.
You got to unpack this for us because our audience will love this. If you talk about coach us, tell us how air and vowel makes a difference or how to implement that in their ministry.
Absolutely. I think, do you want to talk about breathing?
I'd love to.
Yes.
I'd love
to.
Go
for it.
So earlier I said the best you are going to sound is by sounding like you, by not trying to make your voice different than when you talk. So we're trying to boil down a lot of vocal philosophy here, but basically speak. You sing the way you talk. So when you talk, you can talk most people can talk for a long time and they don't get tired. Most people can say a full sentence and you don't think about how much you just breathed. Yeah. Did you take a big breath before you said that sentence? There's things like this that are so natural, but we make so unnatural. And that, you thinking about taking a breath will make it tense in the same way you thinking about how am I going to step forward right now is your leg is going to tense up in ways that it doesn't normally step when you just walk. Yeah. Just walk. So having a good foundation, a good singer's belly breath, I like to think of it as being right below my belly button. I just let my belly drop and air comes in. You don't suck air in.
Right.
It's actually just a natural mechanic. So you just let it drop.
Yeah.
Air should rush in. And I don't know if you can hear that on the mic, but it's actually a silent breath. If my throat is open, I just filled my whole lungs enough to sing a big, huge phrase and you didn't even hear it. So you're not going to hear a lot of
like at the doctor, take a deep breath.
Yeah. Or if you're singing All Hail King Jesus, let every knee come up. You know what I mean? And we all have those moments.
Absolutely.
But if you have that foundation of a good, efficient breath where you just drop your belly, you keep all tension, keep your shoulders out of it. Yeah. Another good way to practice the breath is doing it in front of a mirror. And if your shoulders go, that's what most people do. You do it at the doctor, just let your belly drop and then air will rush in.
I have a comment. I remember being in middle school and my middle school choir teacher literally blowing my mind that when you breathe in, your stomach doesn't go in. I used to think that when you breathe in, you go that made sense to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is opposite. That you're wrong. And so I think that's another part of when you have been in choir or when people in middle school and high school, we have some of these foundations that might already be built in. It's just understanding why it's important. Mm-hmm. And the reason why not breathing this is important is because then you have some tension and singing with tension, just like running with tension, just like doing anything with tension isn't ideal. Like you could have pain, you could hurt yourself. It's going to slow you down. So, so the reason why we believe in that singer's diaphragmatic breath isn't because we want to be pretentious. Like it's because it will set. Yeah, because I'm an opera singer.
I'm an opera singer.
It's because, and I think that's why we love the classical technique. It sets you up for success.
Yeah.
And the way we describe it the most often is it gives you the whole palette of colors to paint with. Like it gives you all of the options to use, and then you can make those choices.
Yeah.
So then I think you should talk about vowel next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So vowel is vowel is the same, just being in line with speaking. It's you already know how to do it. And so one thing that we actually see a lot in like modern worship leading is you pick your vowel. And so when a lot of people sing me, they sing may. And Red Rocks just came out with Good Plans.
Good Plans, yeah.
He has good plans for May. And I think that sometimes it can be a choice stylistically.
Absolutely.
You don't really like how me sounds, but if you're doing that in a key where it's really high, I just think it's an interesting choice. We always say you can do anything as long as it's intentional.
Yes.
So if you like May, then sing May. But if you actually think that sounds weird, and you wouldn't say, "Hey, can you hand that to May? Can you give May that?" That I think that sounds a little bit weird.
Right.
And it also takes me another step away from how I normally use my voice. I don't want to sing with an accent, and I don't want to have like those hard R's and stuff.
Right.
But focusing on where's the natural place of your vowel. In choir, we always got taught tall vowels, really tall vowels. But if I'm singing Graves into Gardens, you turn graves into gardens. I wouldn't go, you turn graves into gardens, right? All of that space is totally unnecessary, but we think that it's helping because that's how we either learned, or having all of that space back there actually feels better to our own ears.
Exactly.
Right. And so back to, not actually knowing how we sound, focus on how you just talk. You don't need to open your mouth that wide.
Right.
You don't do that stuff naturally, and you use your voice all the time. And so kind of one of the best things, in my opinion, to practice that is you just speak through your lyrics.
Yep.
Just speak through your lyrics.
Just
and
say
then
the words of your song.
The next step is to add that breath to it. So take a good singer's breath, and just say, you turn graves into gardens. And you're not really, I just kind of sang there, but you don't have to sing. Don't worry about the notes. Just worry about connecting and coordinating your breath and how you typically, use your mouth.
Absolutely.
Our voice teacher also puts your thumb, follow your neck up to your chin. And if you can feel pressure coming down all the time when you're singing, that's your tongue trying to push down. It's trying to make space. And when you talk, there's nothing's pushing down. There's, sometimes it's a little bit firm, but when you sing, you feel a thing just punch down. That is your tongue. And, try to sing with no tongue.
Right.
All of this is about literally getting out of the way of our own voices. It's not about doing more.
Right.
It's about actually taking off all of these habits and stripping away everything to just your bare voice.
Yeah.
I was going to add to what you guys were saying earlier. I remember too, I think one of the most helpful things that people can do to really understand what you guys are talking about with kind of the body is to see it. And so there are these diagrams that I remember being in. It had to have been like 8th grade when I saw I don't know if it was a rendering or what I would call it, but it was a video loop of a body, like a skeleton with the lungs and things in it, of somebody taking a breath and seeing where the diaphragm goes and where the lungs go and where all the organs go as your diaphragm kind of takes up that space. And I like that. If you haven't seen something like that before, and same thing, I'm sure you guys saw it in undergrad stuff, but like when you see your vocal cavity, when you see the whole kind of throat, nose, ear, kind of like a head split open, and you've got all of the kind of internals
that
exposed.
Is actually right.
That's what we have in the
no
background.
way.
We've got lungs, and then
this is
lungs
air,
and
then the other one is like vowels. Like
that's so dope.
Right down.
That's so
and it's
cool.
watercolor, so
it's
it looks
watercolor. I like it,
artistic.
you know.
I love it. I mean, that stuff is just so
Yeah.
helpful because if you haven't seen it, it's almost like trying to work on your car without having ever seen like what the engine's made up of. You have no idea how that functions together. But when you realize, like you said, when you breathe in, your stomach doesn't actually go in, you know,
Right.
like that stuff is mind blowing. And a lot of people just they haven't seen that before. I showed an intern that one time, the little loop of the breath, and he was like, I think he was in his 30s, and he was like, my whole life is like, my mind is blown right now. And so, but it helped him so much understand that he didn't have to go through that like tension breath because he realized that it was his lower abdomen that's doing the work. And so it can be helpful to just pull that stuff up too.
Well, my favorite one is the thumb, where if you are singing a song and it's not about pushing it and trying to correct it. It's literally like having a meter, where if I'm starting to sing this song and I feel just a lump come and try to punch down, it's because I'm trying to make space because I'm not getting some sort of feedback that I'm looking for. Now, if you don't have in-ears, the worst answer is you can't listen to yourself because you already don't sound like what you're hearing, right? If you leave a voice message, that's not what you sound like, right? Yeah. So you're making decisions on false information.
Right.
Yeah.
So stop listening to yourself, focusing on being loose, speaking through your phrase and really connecting in that way rather than judging on how you sound because you can't.
Or how it feels.
Yeah. You know, how it feels can be another one. If you have really good ears, lean into it. Lean into, I like to dial my ears hot, not because, or my voice hot in my ears, not because that's all I want to hear, but because me singing louder doesn't mean I'm louder in the house. Right. Somebody at the house going, you know, turning me up is the only way to do that. So I don't have to work that hard. I don't have to, I just have to sing and sing in the way I know how to sing with good resonance, with good, you know, support and that's enough. But me trying to give more volume because I'm not getting the feedback that I need is going to just tire me out. Yeah. And I know that from personal experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just,
when you guys are leading songs or serving on your team, we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast with our team here at Churchfront, but I'm curious, what are some of the techniques you guys use with your in-ears to make sure that you are executing effectively with your voice?
Ooh, I think we have a clang system, which has been really eye-opening to me. So we can have like the 3D sound. So that's I know that not everybody has that, but it has helped me a lot to move some of the instruments and some of the things around me. And so that way my voice sits more predominant above everything because I'm the same where if I can hear myself the clearest, not to where I'm like blasting my ears, but if I can hear myself the clearest, then I sing with the least amount of tension and insecurity. I also will add to that, and I'm struggling with this myself, but keeping both ears in at all time. I don't know. I'm assuming most people struggle with this, but you take an ear out because you feel better hearing, and I'm very guilty of this, especially when I'm leading, but I have learned that when I get my ears dialed to where I'm sitting on top of the instruments, I can hear myself clearly, not too loud, and I can actually use my ears as a feedback system to tell myself what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well, then I have more success with that.
Malia is also our MD, so she kind of has to hear all of the instruments on the full band in a like more acutely than I think I do. I dial what I need, and I typically put my voice hot just because if I want to sing something softly, I want to, it's kind of a reassurance that it's coming through, right? The phrase or this verse that you're trying to communicate to your church and leading them in the spirit, you want to make sure that stuff is coming through. And so when you sing something softly and all of a sudden you're not getting that feedback, that one, that'll distract you. And two, it makes you sing harder. And it's not about singing harder.
Absolutely. You know, I think that's the biggest thing is singing harder, like avoiding that.
I think acknowledging too, that if you have ears, you don't know what it sounds like in the house.
Mm.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
And you making decisions for the house on behalf of your own personal mix is not, it sounds obvious when I say it, but
Right.
it's not something that you have to remember that when you're on stage and
Right.
the band is going and you've got, people in front of you, or you're trying to remember the song. Take a moment, calm down, and remember that your role is this, and things like that of simplifying where my role is, simplifying where my responsibility is, helps me take that tension-free breath.
Yeah.
Helps me take that, okay, I am here because God has led me here. And that's all I need to worry about, is that God has led me here and given me the tools to be in this spot right now.
Absolutely.
So I'll take that breath and I will sing however I need to sing.
Right.
But I'm always getting that feedback that what I am doing is coming through.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why I dial my ears high. I actually don't make judgment calls though on tone. Our voice teacher kind of hammered, we had the same voice teacher, and he kind of hammered into us that the idea of don't listen to yourself. You're doing the thing, you can't observe the thing.
Mm.
And so focus on the doing of the thing and how you do the thing. You can't be observing it at the same time. They are out there as a congregation, some would say audience. The audience is there to watch you. You're there to do the thing. You can't watch yourself do the thing.
Right.
Mm. So you're just leveraging the feedback loop or the recording afterwards to say, how do I feel about how I executed? Because now I'm external of the experience. You're no longer executing in the moment. You're able to just kind of listen, and probably listen with a myriad of environments. You might have headphones on, you might have speakers, you might just be listening on your phone or whatever, but you have the opportunity then to actively kind of critique yourself in that moment.
Well, and we're lucky enough to have Saturday and then Sunday service.
Oh yeah.
So we can even take like you even just did this, where you watched yourself leading a song this past weekend, and you said, I noticed some tension in my neck. And I know
me,
right.
Come on.
Preaches the no tension.
But I think that's also that's something we're also really passionate about and want to make clear, is that by saying these things, we're not saying we've mastered it. Please don't hear that we think we know how to do this perfectly and we've got this well. I think it's just, we know what we're working towards. And that's one thing that has helped us so much, is if I know how to diagnose it, if I know what a problem looks like, I can actually fix it.
Yeah.
And you noticed tension. You also hit the note fine, you were singing well and in tune. But I think what your acknowledgement of was, I can do that better. I can do that so many different ways.
I have the note, but I'm working too hard. I can do all of the things that I just saw myself do without grabbing onto it. I get a lot of jaw tension, and you get excited. Sometimes it's really, we were fired up.
We were rocking out.
We were rocking out. We were having joy in the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that when we pair, I really got after it, or in order to hit that high note, I really got to bear down and grab it.
Yeah.
And that's not how your voice works.
Right.
Your voice is basically just a little, your lips buzzing, that's how trumpets work, all that kind of stuff. That's how your voice works. And so you flexing your neck has nothing to do with your vocal folds moving faster.
Harder for you.
And the reason why you hit a high note is because your vocal folds are moving fast, not because you grabbed onto a bunch of muscles in your jaw and all of these things.
Which again has to do, it goes back to air, right? It's the note has to do with air, not your mechanism of your jaw structure.
Exactly.
So
absolutely. And we so often, especially because it's your voice is part of your body. So it's a physical thing. And you want to, you physically get into it. But if you watch a gymnast, right, and they're flying through the air and they're jumping around, my bad.
We'll pick up at if you watch a gymnast there.
A gymnast, yes.
Let's see. Is that okay? Oh, is that still there? Why is that there? Okay, I think.
Yeah, that's
We can
better.
let it
All right.
focus. There we go.
Never. I don't know what's going on.
What kind
with
of camera do you guys use?
It's
An EOS R.
EOSR, but I think I
yeah.
have the autofocus not set on like your eye.
Or
Well,
something.
and they have, I think they do have 30-minute record limits. So after
Oh, yeah.
30 minutes, it will like bleep at you or whatever. So even if you're live streaming with it, but it's not a problem. Don't worry about it.
No world. All right. So if you watch a gymnast, they have gigantic bodybuilder arms and like legs like horses, and they're just so physically just they're very physically fit and like to the nth degree. They're also loose. So the opposite, this is something that I say in my lessons a lot. The opposite of tension is not relaxed. It's loose. Basketball players, they are constantly moving. They need to be fast. They need to be agile.
Yeah.
They need to also be like kind of solid and physical at times. If they are stuck stiff, they're not going to be any of those things. Right.
No.
And so when we think about bearing down on our voice and really getting after it, what you really need to be is thinking loose. It's not about being, oh, well, I'll just do nothing here.
Turn off. Yeah, exactly.
That's not it either. That was like a whole year of my life in voice studio thinking that, oh, I just do nothing. No, that's not it either. So it's
just cross your fingers and hope for the best.
I just have a numb tongue. I'll pretend I have Novocaine.
Pretend I'll just cut my tongue out.
I'll just cut my tongue. I don't need it. Exactly.
I do remember. I'd be curious to know your guys' opinion on this, and I think I would know how you guys would answer, but I want you to share with the audience. I remember being in college, an intern at a church at Waterstone Community Church in Littleton, over by C470 Bowles, and I was singing, and one of the songs that my intern supervisor always gave me was Cornerstone, Hillsong song, easy, like I love singing it, but I had grown up I had been singing. I think I've been singing in choirs since I was in 3rd or 4th grade. And so I had been just hammered in tall vowels, like long, warm washcloth on the cheeks to sound tall and relaxed and the whole thing. And then I would sing contemporary Christian worship music, and I would bring all of that into Cornerstone, which is like it sounds weird when you sing it chorally. When you sing all these kind of long notes and kind of rigid, like it's not a very texty song. It's kind of more, there's a lot of drawn out vowel and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So my intern supervisor had said, Luke, like you gotta get out of the choral mindset when you sing these things because it sounds weird. And so one of the things I was like, okay, but I don't know how, like I've never done this before. Mean? So what does that mean? And the instruction he gave me still makes me laugh. I still tell people to do this all the time. Is he just told me to go in the bathroom and sing in front of a mirror. Ooh. And he was like, I want you to watch your mouth as you sing. Like you don't need to listen to yourself in terms of the the tone or anything like that, but I want you to just watch the shapes that your mouth makes. And and again, it goes back to seeing the cavity and like the internals and things, but it revealed to me how what I was doing was pretty weird. Because I was used to fitting in with a choir of 60 plus people and, trying to blend well and that whole thing. Yes. So if you guys are talking to somebody who you're either coaching or maybe who's on a volunteer team and they're coming in with not necessarily bad habits, because I don't think the choral training is great fundamentals at some level, but how do you coach them towards singing in style? Like how would you encourage them, you get the late, I'm gonna no shame on the ladies, but there are some old ladies that have a lot of the warble still,
Absolutely.
And so how do you coach them towards the style that you're singing?
I think, not to be redundant, I think a lot of it does come back to air and vowel. And I do believe that singing in front of a mirror, I mean, that's not something I've ever said, but I think ultimately
it's a good one.
Agree with so much, because I think not only can it expose if you're doing something that looks unnatural, but it would expose then tension too, because that wobble, all of these things, this like forced vibrato, you can see clearly. You can see people with their head shaking or their neck, shaking, or their jaw or chin. And I've had all of those things in my journey as a singer. So I think the mirror is absolutely a great a tool to use. But then I think learning how to breathe is one aspect of air, but learning how to use your breath is another aspect of air. And that's going to go into good resonance. That's going to go into you sounding like your own true voice. And then ultimately going back to vowels, which is the speaking aspect of it. Like, I think obviously as we age, we're going to have different elements of our voice that come out, just like wrinkles. It'll be like wrinkles of our voice. Like that's going to happen, I think, naturally. But I think it's more of an indicator of the technique you sang with throughout your life than it is of age, if that makes sense. Like I think that, but if you're trying to fix this retroactively now, like you are, you're leading a choir, which we just had in Christmas,
It was awesome.
that had somebody like 13 all the way to I think 80 or something like that.
Nice.
We're not working on them blending. That's not our goal here.
Right.
But if we were working on, I mean, I think,
Did
you work on that?
I'll talk. Yeah,
I think that ultimately, if
I
you
didn't really focus on technique, though, is what you were saying,
right,
which is true.
I think that if you're wanting them to sound modern, you're going to want to help them use their air in a way that is efficient. I mean, we use that word all the time on our channel, and I think it's hard to explain what that means. It ultimately is like the way it was intended, like. You want efficient air and efficient vowels so you can have the most resonance in your voice. It is the most like whole sound you can create with this instrument. Just like when you play a clarinet that has a reed, if you're not doing it perfectly, it's not going to have the most resonance.
Or a bird. Birds have these tiny little lungs, and they, I actually am not familiar with like how specifically their
like
voices
vocal
and
folds.
songs
Yeah.
works. But like you can hear a bird with these with little nothing air
big,
and from like a very long way away.
Yeah.
And it's because of efficiency. So if you think about our big lungs and this little tiny 2 flaps of skin that are our vocal folds that buzz, how do I use those things in a way that I can get the most out of it? And a lot of people don't think about that because it's such a personal thing and it's such a artistic thing. But I think that it's like, try it, because you'll be wonderfully surprised about how beautiful and full, and also how easy at the same time, right? Can you imagine that not only is it the most beautiful you've ever sounded, it's also the easiest it's ever been.
Yeah, that's a good indicator.
What in the world? I just to speak on like the choral piece, because wanting to be a choir teacher, choir was my whole life for a long time. I'm actually astounded that I'm not a part of any choir at this point.
Right.
But I, one of the reasons, at least this is my belief, the reason why choir teachers say tall vowels, all that kind of stuff, is not because they're trying to get you to sound like anything, specific. It's because it's easy to blend. If you're working with 30, 60, 80 people in a room and you want all of them to blend, but I don't have time to give 80 people voice lessons every week.
Right.
You are going to say tall vowels because it kind of washes everything out and it makes it sound, it's easy to sound like one cohesive unit when they're all like, oh, right? There's no edge to that. There's no ping. We talk about ping. If you don't know, vowels have frequencies. So specific vowels have specific frequencies that punch through. And when you have them really tall or really wide or really far back, it dulls those, it blunts it so that you don't stick out in the mix, so that you don't, you aren't heard over the whole thing.
Yeah.
As a choir, that's a good thing. As a solo singer, that's a terrible thing. You need to be heard. You need to punch out.
Yeah.
And when I start bringing vowels, and the same thing, you know how to breathe. Yeah, well, there's also like a little bit of a singer's breath that we should learn. There are also singer's vowels. So E, A, A, O, U are the pure vowels.
Yeah.
We sing in English, and there's some, diphthongs, the mixture of vowels that's in there. And so work on the pure vowels, and then also lean in to sounding nasal. Lean into being too bright. That's what everyone's afraid of. Everyone's heard some nasal singer and they go, oh, would be the worst.
Right.
But I bet you a couple years after, that nasal singer is Tori Kelly. That nasal singer is somebody who is just a fantastic, people talk about powerhouse vocals.
Yeah.
it's because you can fill a room with your sound. Your voice is bouncing off the walls. People can hear it because it's efficient. So lean into that, bringing everything forward, almost too forward to your own ears.
Yeah.
It's going to be uncomfortable. Right. And it's going to sound too much, but then I always say, record yourself on your phone and listen back, or have a trusted person that you say, hey, can I sing something for you? And you give me some feedback. And then if they say it's too nasally, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't just immediately go back. Form it, try again, keep all the goodness and keep forming it, keep leaning into that. Cause that's what a lot of people are really afraid of, the brightness. But if you listen to isolated vocals of Brandon Lake or my favorite, Chris Brown, it is so, the weapon may be formed. It's like, he's so right
teeth.
there.
It's like teeth the whole time.
And it's nose and it's we would,
you can feel
we would call it the singer's mask. Yeah. You can feel it.
Yeah.
And if you heard it without the context of the band, it'd probably be too much. Right. But when it's as a part of the whole, it's exactly where it needs to be, and it needs to punch through, and it needs to go through. So I think that's what I would say to a lot of choral singers is I love looking in the mirror, but also speaking through it. That's the practice. Like, you do that every day. Yeah. Because not only will you memorize your song and you'll know it and you'll be able to internalize it so much better, but you'll also be more practiced in combining and coordinating your breath and what vowels you've chosen. Yeah. Like, on that really high note, it's really hard to sing May. Right. So I'm going to sing me, or, you make those choices, and lean into having a bright sound, leaning into having a nasal voice. I don't think you'll regret it. I've never told anybody they're too nasally.
Absolutely.
In
that's good.
15, I think not 15, maybe 12 years of teaching private voice. I have constantly told, I said, be too nasal.
More.
Be whatever you think is
Bring
too nasal.
More forward.
Let's try it. Let's try it. And then they'll do it. I'm like, that was awesome. Yeah. And not too nasal at all. And let's record it so that you can hear what I just heard.
Absolutely.
It's I've never told not a single person that is too nasal.
I just want to add to the, when you're trying to help somebody sound more stylistically, like, relevant to worship music, contemporary music, I really think that mirror thing, I love that so much. I think pair that with speaking through a song. You'll never be more natural than when you're just saying it. And you don't have to get like poetic, like, the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. You don't have to do that. Like, you can just, if you were going to say it, like, let's pretend you're reading scripture, pretend you're saying like reading a text message, that will help bring the style of what I think contemporary worship music is back to life for you.
We're communicating.
Yeah.
Right.
We're just
communicating. So if you put it through, why does the AI robot voice turn so many people off? It's because it doesn't feel, it has no connection to us as human beings. And so speaking through it, and even, I'll sound like a robot when I speak through something. I keep having see victory in my head, but the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. That's me just trying to focus on my vowels and nothing else.
Right.
I'm literally just trying to bring all that stuff forward. And especially songs that I led 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I bring all my old habits back with me.
Yep.
And so when I'm singing a song like that I haven't learned recently, I start from square one.
Yeah.
I start over. And that's frustrating too, especially as a person who's like, well, I'm a famous internet vocal teacher. I don't need to practice like that. But literally taking it down to the bare bones and starting with my training wheels all over again has only given me so much, just foundation, grounding, helps me be able to communicate that song better and also sing it consistently every single time.
On your guys' perspective, I think I've got two wrap-up questions on my end that I want to make sure we hit. One is, what could you name two artists or people who you can go listen to that are doing it really well, that you listen to and you go, man, good technique, good execution. It's not fluff. People, if they're looking for an example, like male and female, who are you guys listening to these days that you're really impressed by?
I would say Naomi Rain, female-wise. And then I would also say Elisa Smith. I don't know if she's married yet.
Wait, you get one man and one woman.
No, I'm doing two women. Two men.
So I have to say Brooke Fraser is just now and forever will be one of the most
incredible.
effortless,
incredible.
beautiful. She digs in and like we
Yes.
do, what's that song?
Ancient Gates or
No.
Awake My Soul.
Awake My Soul, where she
Yeah.
just goes, hey,
Yeah.
she gets
Yes.
after it.
So good.
And so like, she's not just a pretty voice.
Right.
She's
Yeah.
a fantastic user of
her instrument. Okay, I would
Yeah.
agree with that.
And
That was
so-
just a different generation. Okay?
Also,
Totally.
she's been doing it for 20,
Yeah.
for however long that she's been doing
Absolutely.
it, and it still sounds amazing.
That's a huge
Yeah.
sign.
You know, there's a lot of people who can't do it, you know, 30s, later 30s, like it
Mhm.
gets harder to hit that note. It gets harder
Mhm.
to dig down a growl. So I think she's a testament to doing a
Yeah.
good job with it.
Okay, so we got some good female
Man.
names on there.
Yeah,
names,
I mean,
What's your man?
no,
I say Chris Brown
Chris Brown.
sure.
from Elevation.
He's very consistent.
He's very consistent. And I
Really
think
good.
when we say consistent, that just means sustainable. Like that means
Yeah.
we believe that from what we hear and see and assume he is doing, technically, he will be able to do it for a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
has been able
And
to
has been able to do it for a
Yeah.
long time. I hesitate to say Brandon Lake, not because he's not an incredible vocalist. I think he
Yeah.
is an incredible vocalist. I think, though, in my mind, he's been on the scene too short for me to feel like confident in his
Totally.
technique.
Yeah.
He sings in a way that I don't actually actively sing in. He has that
Yeah.
grit and growl
Right.
that from my technique side, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about grit and growl? Because I think that is kind of a trend that I'm
I
hearing
agree,
in
too.
men. That is like, it's not Creed, but it's
No.
kind of edging towards like the grunge rock again of like the
Absolutely.
90s. And I'm like, but when you go back to the speaking thing, I'm like, nobody talks like that unless you're
Nobody
Sure.
smoking or you've got some like
Yeah.
permanent damage. Nobody
Ultimately.
talks like that. So
Sure.
where does the grunge and grit come from when you're singing? Is that a good thing? Should that be avoided? Is that a country emphasis? Like, what do we think about that?
I think they're all colors.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
you can paint with whatever colors that you want to paint with. I have kind of leaned into that grit and growl a lot over the last 2 years. And if I sang a whole service like that,
Mm.
it would be rough. You know,
Yeah.
I try to pick and choose the times where I'm going to do it. You know, I don't think that everything has to be the most efficient ever. I
Yeah.
think that should be your foundation. That should be your
Yeah.
baseline. Your baseline should be like, I can sing this a million times if I sing it this way.
Right.
Yeah.
If I choose to then add these colors and these things, points of emphasis,
Absolutely.
you know, people don't sound like when they talk, but they might sound like that when they are screaming
Right.
or
Right.
when they are passionate
Passionate,
about
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
If they get really excited, they might start, you know, getting louder and a
Right.
little
So it's
more gruff.
momentary. It's a
Absolutely.
momentary stylistic decision as
Yeah.
opposed to a consistent way of singing through a
Yeah.
whole song.
I think
Definitely.
it's a technique, but it's not like a foundational practice,
Yeah,
right?
that's
We
good.
have our vocal philosophy,
Right.
but you can use all kinds of different vocal techniques in order to
Yeah.
get a specific sound you want, right?
Yeah.
If, you know, people talk about recording artists, and if you've got a song that has a specific vibe that you're going for, but it kind of is tough, or it sounds
Or
like squeaky
compromises
or
your
compromises
technique, yeah.
something, that's cool. Definitely do it. But take into account, if you go on tour with that, you're going to have to sing it a bunch
Right.
of times. You're going to have to sing it when you're dehydrated. You're going to have to sing it when you're sick. And so like, there's two sides to that coin. Yes, it's a cool sound. Can you do it every night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, gosh, I don't know
Yeah.
for dudes. I really like, he sang with Amanda Cook.
Roosevelt?
Roosevelt. I thought he had
Stewart,
a beautiful voice. I don't know, like when I just heard him sing, then it was like, wow, that's just effortlessly beautiful. But I don't know, you know, it's another one of those where I don't know his
How
whole
about
career.
technically? Is there anybody you
Yeah.
love?
Phil Wickham, big fan.
I would say Phil Wickham too.
That guy's
I really
got just
love
such an
Melia.
upper register. It blows my
man.
mind.
And he's been doing this for like 30 years.
He
Consistency.
though, but
Right?
he had surgery, didn't he?
He
had
did.
nodes.
And
He had
he,
nodes
like-
that he had to get adjusted because, like, that's
Yep.
so. Yes,
And that's
consistency. I can't believe he can still sing up there because.
Yeah.
But he was obviously
Well-
doing something that was harming his voice.
Absolutely.
But I bet you he got vocal therapy afterwards and now can do it better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
Right.
this is a thing. People don't even realize how many of their favorite singers have
have
had
already
vocal
had
surgery.
nodes.
And
Yeah.
that was a big part of when we started our channel of just like telling people, it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, you can do it, but like you're gonna have vocal surgery. Adele, had a capillary burst, and after she, like directly after she did, when she was finally healed, she did a carpool karaoke and sang the best she's ever I've ever heard her sing. And it was just from the car mic. It's not a recording, it's whatever. And John Mayer too. A lot of these amazing people have had vocal surgery. Leland and Phil Wickham have both had it. But I think you come through that going, okay, if I want to keep doing this, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And
maybe we don't want to get to that point.
Maybe we don't want to get to that
like
point.
Learn, like that's what we're trying to help people do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to sing forever.
Right.
I want to sing forever. So yeah, it's just,
I think those would be I think definitely Chris Brown, and we'll throw 3. So Chris Brown, Brandon Lake, and Phil Wickham. Classic. Male.
Somebody I'll say I'm a little worried about is Chandler Moore. I don't know how he's doing what he's doing.
In Maverick?
Yeah, Maverick. Yeah.
He, has an absolutely beautiful voice, and I think it's served so many people. And so I don't want to knock that, but I'm like, he's 20,
like 27. He's not very.
No, I think he's young. He's like
either way.
Early 20s.
He's not in his 30s.
Anyway, I'm interested to see, but I'm not going to call it as being one thing or the other, because he could be able to sing like that forever.
Right. He's got like a raspiness to his voice that you're like, is that natural? Is that muscular? Like, where does that rasp come from? When I listen to him, I also think I'd be interested to see where this goes.
Absolutely.
And even if it's natural, some people take speech therapy.
Yeah.
When they talk like this, or they talk certain ways, and so just my understanding with functionally how the voice works, I don't always get how some people's voices do what they do.
Yeah.
And so, some people still throw me for a loop, and I'm just going to raise my hands up and worship, because
that's right.
That's my job.
The guy's got chops, though. The guy can sing.
For
that is
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
write and all of it.
Okay, so as we wrap, tell our people where your channel is, where they can find Chase and Malia. What's the dedicated spot for them to connect with you guys online?
YouTube for sure. We have not completely abandoned Instagram, but we're just not very active. So I would say YouTube, Chase and Malia is our channel, and we love posting. We're hoping that this year we're going to change things up a little bit in an exciting way, trying to give more specifically to worship leaders. I think we find that is for sure our passion, and it's actively what we're doing. So we can speak the most to it at this season in our life. So YouTube, Chase and Malia, that's where you could find us. Yeah.
And I'm telling you guys, there's like a very, very, very small pocket of the internet that's doing like vocal education or vocal resources, especially even smaller for the church. So you guys have hit the nail on the head in terms of a niche, and I'm going to be pointing people towards you, as we come on, because there's, we always get, requests for like, man, how do I teach my team how to do harmonies, and how do I fix this gal who's warbly, or how do I, how do I get a higher register? And so we're always like, man, we love our worship leaders. We're worship in tech. We believe that vocals is part of that, but that's like a whole, like my default is always get into voice lessons. Just go find yourself a vocal coach.
Yeah.
Like you will get there, but you can't get there by reading a blog. You're just not going to get there. So, well, that's great, guys. I super appreciate your time. You guys have been amazing guests. Hopefully I'll get to come to the tech tour when we come and do that, because it sounds like a great place. And what's the place people can find more about your church? Like if they want to watch or look at Jubilee, what's the website?
jfc.org. And we do have Saturday services. That's a big thing for people. So if you're going on Sunday, or if you're serving on Sunday, because that's what we would do. We have Saturday at 4 and Sunday at 10. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Chase and Malia, thanks for joining us today. That's awesome to have you guys, and hope to have you guys back here soon.
Yes, thanks so much. It was a great time.
Super fun.